What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. It is UEP here, and today I'm going to be talking about where the polls overestimated Hillary Clinton and where they underestimated Hillary Clinton. I'm also going to be talking about, coincidentally, in 2016, where the polls overestimated Clinton or underestimated, or overestimated Trump or underestimated Trump. So, let's underestimate Clinton. So, first. Okay, that should be under, or yeah, fine. Wait a minute. Oh yeah, underestimated Clinton, and then this will be classic colors red. Overestimated Clinton. So, anyways, so basically, this will just be a map of who or of whether the polls in this region underestimated or overestimated Hillary Clinton. So, this is my current prediction for the 2020 election map, with Joe Biden winning 333 to Trump's 205. Margins includes, we're going to include margins here. So we're going to get started without further ado. I want to start out right here in Alaska. And in Alaska, there was one poll that had Trump ahead by 3. And let's see if we can find Alaska. Trump ended up winning it by 12, basically 12 points. So it underestimated Trump, or it overestimated Clinton by 12 points. So it'll be a safe margin. So they vastly overestimated Hillary Clinton in Alaska. Now, actually, in terms of the raw percentages, they gave her 34%, and in Alaska she actually got 37%. But again, remember that we're not having, in the polls there are undecided voters who, so yeah. So now we're gonna move over to Hawaii, and let's find Hawaii. Let's do Hawaii. Okay, so there's nothing in Hawaii, so we're just gonna leave that as a blank. We'll just do okay. The classic colors we'll do no data. We'll just add that. And I hate that stupid chart that shows how about you want to do bottom donut there. Yeah, that's better. So there's no data for Hawaii, and for some of these smaller states, not going to be a lot of data. And then, okay, so now we're going to go over to the state of, let's do Washington. Okay, Washington, Trump versus Clinton. So I believe that the polls actually had Clinton 14.3% ahead. She ended up winning this race by, I believe, a little less, but not too much. So she ended up winning that race. Okay, not the county, just the state. No, just the state. Okay, let's just see if we can, just the state. Okay, so Hillary Clinton won this by 15.5%, and the polls had her ahead by 16%. So she basically did how they projected. So we're just gonna put they overestimated her a tiny bit, but yeah, doesn't really matter in that case. Okay, so now we're gonna move over to the state of Oregon, and so the polls actually, I believe, they underestimated Clinton because they had her ahead by net 8. Oh, and they have the final results right here. Okay, that's stupid. I should have looked just there. So they actually had Clinton ahead by 8, and the final results were 10.6. So that means they underestimated her by 2.6%. So they underestimated Hillary Clinton by a lean margin. Okay, by a lean margin. So now we're going to go over to California. Trump versus Clinton. Very interesting. That they had Clinton ahead by 22 points, and she actually won by 28. So that was a likely margin that they underestimated her by. So you start to notice that a lot of these polls actually underestimated Hillary Clinton, especially in the Sun Belt. Oh, oops. Okay, now we're gonna go to the state of Nevada, where they underestimated Clinton actually by a pretty good amount. So they had Trump ahead by 1 point, although it was very swingy in that period. So Clinton had the lead, but they actually underestimated Clinton, and this was actually a flip. So they underestimated Clinton by a net margin of basically 3.5 points. So I don't know why I keep going there. So that is a lean margin of underestimation for Clinton. So now we're also going to go over the state of Arizona, where they definitely underestimated her. They had Trump ahead by 4, and the final results actually had Trump ahead by 3.5. So not too much. I don't know why I keep clicking that. Okay, so say underestimated Clinton by a tad, a very small margin, but didn't really matter. Okay, now we're going to go to the state of Utah, where it was interesting because they pulled McMullen, I believe. Yeah, and he actually ended up getting 21% of the vote. In polling, he pulled a little bit. Okay, he pulled a little bit better than that, but he actually pulled better than he actually did. So they had Trump ahead by 10.4 in the polling, and he actually won it by 18. So they overestimated Clinton here. Overall, kind of being a little bit with this, but by a likely margin. Okay, now we're gonna go to Idaho, and I don't think I don't get. Okay, so they did pull Idaho actually, and the Nets. So they underestimated Trump here by a small margin. So yeah, they overestimated Clinton by default. And yeah, so now we're gonna go to Montana, and I'm pretty sure that they pulled Montana. Trump versus Clinton. So Trump won by 10.5, by 20.5, and this intercepted 15th lead for him. So that's a likely margin. Oh my gosh, I keep clicking on the wrong tab of overestimation for Hillary Clinton. Okay, I doubt that they pulled Wyoming, because if they did, yeah. So there's actually going to be no data on the state of Wyoming. So yeah, no data for Wyoming. Now we're going to do Colorado, and I believe that they underestimated Clinton because she ended up winning it by something like 5 points, and they had her ahead, pretty consistently, but still, so they underestimated her by just barely a tilt margin, basically a lead margin. So yeah, and as you can see, there was a point in time where it was basically tied, but Trump had a lead, and Trump actually during some points he actually was the favorite to win Colorado. And he had some, good days in the polling there. So now, let's do North Dakota. I don't believe that they. Okay, North Dakota. Okay, nope. There's no data there, and I'm gonna assume that there's no data on South Dakota either. Let's find it. South Dakota. Oh, okay, there actually is. So they had Trump ahead, about a lot less than that. So they underestimated Trump by a very safe margin, and in fact, the polling actually suggested it would be likely for Trump, which is interesting. So yeah, in Nebraska, I'm gonna see if they just did it by district, so we're just gonna do it at large. Nebraska, okay, congressional districts 2. They actually had Trump ahead by 9, so they underestimated Clinton a lot actually, by a likely margin. Okay, I keep hitting. Okay, by a likely margin. Oops, not likely. Okay, and now we're also going to do Nebraska just at large generally. So Trump actually, so they underestimated Clinton by a teeny tiny bit overall. So it'll be kind of okay. So it'll be tilt all around for Nebraska, but again, this little win because congressional district. So I know that they pulled Kansas. And it was interesting because they underestimated Clinton here, I believe. Oh, okay. So they actually underestimated Trump. Basically overestimating Hillary Clinton. So now we're going to go Oklahoma. I don't know why they were pulling that because so they underestimated Trump there by a pretty decent amount. So we'll just say safe because I'm too lazy to do the math. Now we'll do New Mexico because we haven't done New Mexico yet, and let's see New Mexico. Okay, so this is interesting because they actually overestimated Trump here because they had Clinton had very narrowly in it. And if we can look at where is that map? Okay. It's a cool little graph. That's okay. Whatever. So they actually overestimated Trump here by a pretty decent amount. I don't know. I'm being annoying. So as you can see, there's a trend. They underestimate Clinton in the Sun Belt, but they're overestimating her in these other regions. Now we're going to go to the state of Texas, which I believe they underestimated her in as well, although it wasn't horrible. Okay, so the average had Trump ahead by 12 points, and he actually ended up winning by 9. So it'll be tilt for. So as you can see, the polls actually underestimated Hillary Clinton a lot more than you expect. Sure, they overestimated her in South Dakota, in Oklahoma, in Kansas, but like those states don't matter as much as these Sunbelt states do. Okay, to Louisiana, where I believe they overestimated Clinton a lot. So the polling data actually like it had Trump ahead, but how well do you know the Washington Redskins? They are now the Washington football team, which is literally the worst name I can think of. Um, so yeah, so they overestimated Clinton here. It was very narrow. Arkansas, I believe, that they overestimated her here, from what I recall. Trump was Clinton. Okay, the Arkansas poll, such a good name. So they actually underestimated uh, Trump here, by a lean margin. Now Missouri, in a lot of these Midwestern states, they underestimated Trump, and I believe there were some polls that actually had Clinton ahead. So the RCP average actually had Trump ahead by 9.5, and he actually won by basically double that. So he won. I remember there was a poll that came out that was controversial, but yeah, Clinton ahead by 1, and Trump, um, he pulled ahead by he pulled ahead, so he won this by 9. So that's a difference of 9 points. So that's a likely margin for overestimating Clinton. In Iowa, I believe they had Trump winning on election day, but they overestimated Clinton. So the polls had Trump +3. So they overestimated. It's actually interesting because the polls at the start had Trump ahead, or Clinton ahead, but so again, overestimated Hillary Clinton by a likely margin. So starting this trend here, the Sun Belt favoring Clinton because they underestimated her, whereas in the Midwest, it's not looking too great for Hillary. Okay, now we're gonna go Minnesota, where I know that they overestimated Clinton there. So the polling actually had, why does it not give me the net? Okay, so they basically overestimated her by a likely margin. Michigan, where they also, so again, Midwest, they overestimated Clinton a lot. Trump ended up winning by 0.3. Although there was a poll that came out on that day that had Trump ahead by 2. So there were polls taken every day here, kind of where the graph is messed up a teeny bit, but yeah. So anyways, Trump ahead by 3 in the average had Clinton ahead. So it was within the margin of error, remember, but basically a lean margin of overestimation for Hillary Clinton. Okay. Yeah. Let's go to the state of Wisconsin, where they definitely overestimated Clinton here. This was the worst state for her. They had her ahead by 6.5. Trump ended up winning by 0.7. So that's a very bad margin of error. So as you're going to see, the worst states have been the Midwest for Trump. Oklahoma, they got wrong a lot. South Dakota. California wasn't great. So basically, Alaska wasn't great. So these deeper shades are good, and then in these lighter shades like Arizona, Texas, Louisiana, the polling was pretty spot on. So let's go to Illinois. I believe they actually did pretty decent. Yeah. So the polling actually had Clinton ahead only by a likely margin, but she ended up winning. So they underestimated Clinton here by a likely margin. It's actually interesting, but that's probably the lone state that they underestimated her in. That resides in the Midwest. Indiana, Trump was Clinton. There was a poll that Clinton ahead. I remember that came out. That was a little controversial. I read on the news. Okay, interesting man. So the net had Trump ahead by 10, but so they underestimated him by solid likely margin right there. So let's see. Okay, so they overestimated Clinton there. Likely margin. So again, the Midwest not looking too great for Hillary. Ohio, they actually had Trump ahead in the polling, but still underestimated him. So 8.1 minus 2.2 is 5.9. So that's a likely margin, of overestimation. So yeah, look at this. Look at how bad the polling was in the Midwest. Now, it was within the margin of error in a lot of in Michigan. In Minnesota, and in Iowa, they got it right, but they underestimated Trump there. So yeah. let's go to Kentucky, where I believe they Bevin. We don't want Bevin, Kentucky, Trump versus Clinton. There we go, Trump versus Clinton. So the polling actually had Trump ahead by 15, but they underestimated him by a safe margin. That's a very interesting because like some people thought that this race always going to be close. No, it actually wasn't. So Tennessee, Trump versus Clinton. Some people thought it was going to be close because of Bill Clinton. He won there, but the polling didn't reflect that, and Trump ended up polling at Trump ahead by 10. So they underestimated Trump again in a lot of these more southern states that Bill Clinton carried because generally. So it's very close right now. In a lot of the states, like Nevada's a swing state, Arizona's a swing state, Texas is a swing state, that they underestimate Clinton. And it's very good news for Joe Biden because they underestimated Clinton here. They're probably underestimating him here. And they have Biden ahead in Arizona consistently, in Nevada consistently. And some polls are like they're starting to put him ahead in Texas. And if Trump doesn't carry Texas, he's 100% done for. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna go to Mississippi. Okay. Gary Johnson. He was in there. Johnson, he actually. So this was a Republican leading poll, but it still underestimated Trump by a pretty decent amount. So, all right. So now we're gonna go Alabama. I think that they're pretty spot on in Alabama. Okay, so there are no polling. So there's no polling in Alabama. So there's no data there. So we have 4 states that have no data. And yeah, so let's do Georgia. And there was definitely polling on Georgia that had Trump ahead. And they actually underestimated Clinton here, I believe, because, they didn't. Okay, that's actually interesting. I thought, so they barely, the polling was basically spot on here. They underestimated Trump here, but a tiny, tiny bit. Now, Florida, I believe they overestimated Clinton by putting her ahead narrowly in the polling. Oh, okay, so that's interesting. The polling actually had, so they overestimated Clinton a tiny bit, but the polling actually had Trump ahead. So that's very interesting. So yeah. Now let's go and talk about the Carolina that is in the South. And I believe they underestimated Clinton here as well. So I don't know, it's just 14. So okay, so I'm getting a lot of these wrong. So I'm just gonna stop jinxing it because they actually overestimated Clinton by a lead margin. Now North Carolina, I'm not gonna say what I thought happened because I've gotten it wrong for the past few. North Carolina. Okay, so most of these polls were very close, and they underestimated Trump here by a lean margin. So they overestimated Clinton by default, and so the South, they're overestimating Trump a lot. So let's do West Virginia, Mountain Mama. Trump versus Clinton, West Virginia. Trump ended up winning by 42, so they definitely over. But again, that didn't really matter because they had a being 20-point lead for Trump when he actually won by 42. So yeah, let's see Virginia. I believe they actually underestimated Clinton here. I'll be wrong about that. Okay, so they just barely underestimated her, and there were some polls that Trump had by. So they barely underestimated Clinton here. So yeah. Now we're gonna do let's do Washington. Let's do District of New Hampshire. Oh, that was the House district. Okay, I'm gonna do. Okay, we'll just do no data for DC. Maryland. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't poll any of these Democratic primary. Okay, so Clinton ended up winning by 25.5. So they actually overestimated Clinton here. So we'll give that the likely overestimation in Delaware. It was actually so then that results in Delaware, if this page wants to load, where they overestimated Clinton again. So it is in the Northeast. There was a lot of third-party voting, so they did actually end up overestimating Clinton here because a lot of those, so a lot of the never Trumpers who say, "Well, I'm not going to vote for Trump, but I'm certainly not going to vote for crooked Hillary." they cast a protest vote, and that is what actually hurt Clinton, but she still won in a lot of those states. Pennsylvania, polls had Clinton ahead. She ended up losing it, but it was in the margin of error, members, and there were a lot of polls that Trump ahead, So Trump ended up winning by 2. So net 2.8. So they underestimated Trump or overestimated her by a tiny, tiny bit. So as you can see, that's broken 270. So the majority of states did overestimate Clinton, but again, not as much as people like to say. Let's do New Jersey, where I believe they actually underestimated Clinton. Yes, they underestimated Clinton overall. In fact, there were some polls that had it as like a toss-up race. That's stupid, but okay, not Pennsylvania. No. It was by a lean margin of underestimation for Trump. Okay, New York, I think that they actually, they're pretty spot on there. Okay, so basically spot on. I'm too lazy to do all the averages of those, What we could do is, what do you mean he plummets? He was up by 22 in the most recent. Okay. Okay, so I'm too lazy to do this, so we're just gonna say that it was basically underestimated Clinton by a tiny, tiny bit, although it just may have overestimated her. Connecticut, Clinton. This is going a lot longer than I, anticipated. So they actually underestimated Clinton here by a lean margin. So it is pretty close, actually. Do you think about it? It's an island. See if Rhode Island. So Rhode Island, Trump versus Clinton. If RCB wants to load, see, this page is kind of glitchy, which is why I don't like it as much as. But I can only find this poll. So there was a poll that had Clinton ahead by 3. What the heck? So let's average that out, and basically, they overestimated Trump here by a tiny bit. Mental math, and yeah. Massachusetts, and these polls always make it closer than like all these big states. They had it Clinton ahead by 29, and she actually won by 27. Again, I don't know why they were polling in Massachusetts, because we all know to whom that state's gonna vote for in 2020, and we all know who's gonna vote for in 2016. Vermont, I don't know why were they polling Vermont. 28.5 showed they actually underestimated Clinton here a pretty decent amount. So yeah, let's do New Hampshire. We don't want Senate, although that was an interesting Senate race between Kelly Ayotte and Maggie Hassan. So the polling was spot on here, actually. So we're gonna say, although thing of it it was spot on. So the one state that it was exactly spot on. So we have 4,000 votes. We'll do Maine. Trump versus Clinton. Okay, Maine second congressional district was the swingy one, and Trump actually won. So they actually vastly underestimated Trump here, but almost the same margin, just barely a likely margin. And likely margin. And let's see the polling. Just Maine generally. First district. Okay, that's actually gonna take longer than I expected. First district, 14.9. So they actually underestimated her. So they underestimated her by a likely margin in the first district. Now, so we can see our final electoral map count. Maine at large. They overestimated Hillary Clinton here by a lean margin, if my math is correct. I didn't really look at it, though. I just guessed. So this is the final map, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah. This is exactly the final map here. And thanks for watching. This went a lot longer than I wanted to. So the bottom line is that 231 electoral votes underestimated Hillary Clinton, and 285 overestimated her. Whereas 22 had no data at all. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next one.